We waren lekker.
Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well.
Okay, Madam President, I'm glad to see you, glad to hear you. I'm concerned about the economic situation in Europe. You know that assistance to Ukraine depends on it, and some countries are already openly saying that internal problems are more important to them than Ukraine. So I just would like to ask you how the things in Europe as a whole, how did the crisis hit? So what is your position?
Where we have an issue is on inflation because of the bottlenecks that have survived the end of COVID. We are seeing prices that have initially gone up only in the area of energy and then gradually through fertilizers in particular to food and now on a much broader basis. So the inflation that we had hoped would be transitory has continued much longer than thought and at a much higher level than expected. So as a result of that, all central banks, and the ECB is no exception, have to take measures in order to reduce inflation so that people do not suffer from high prices and we have a more stable economy. As a result, we have started raising interest rates, which were negative, minus 50 basis points about a year ago, and which are now at 2% for the most frequently used interest rates. So we have growth that is low. We have prices that are too high that we have to bring down. That's the situation that we have at the moment.
Why do you think how Russia was able to overcome the sanctions policy? I'm told the sanctions are hitting the European economy and the euro, I think, more than we expected. And so are the sanctions working, or is Europe shooting itself in the foot? Russia's GDP has grown. It is now the 9th in the world. How do you assess the policy of Central Bank of Russia and head of Russia's central bank, Elvira Nabiullina? They managed to save the ruble. And why? Why do you think so?
I think Elvira, whom I know well, is a very good central bank governor. She very quickly understood what the situation was, and she increased interest rates massively. And that was at the time the right response in order to make sure that inflation was not going to go through the roof, and in order to make sure that people who had invested in Russia, essentially Russians, would keep the money in Russia. So she managed that very well in the early days. And as a result of that, inflation went up, but not very much, and went back down again. So she did a magnificent job. I have no hesitation to say that. I do think that the sanctions are biting, not as much as we had expected, true. And I also think that the technological barriers that are now imposed on Russia will also have an effect on their growth and on their business model. The problem with the energy prices, as I see it, and I'm not an energy expert, is that they still manage to sell a lot of their energy, whether it is oil or whether it is gas, to other countries than those countries that apply the sanctions, and certainly outside of the European Union. When they sell to India, when they sell to China, when they sell to the Far East, well, they manage to get currencies in, and I don't know whether they get renminbi, whether they get rupees or what, but they certainly manage to sell and to bring money in.